Greetings, folks. Welcome back to the Jason Damico show, and it is great to be back. We are filming like crazy via Zoom during these COVID-19 strange times in the world and in the music industry. I've got a very special guest for you. This guy and I go way back, and this is actually the first time we're speaking, quote-unquote, face-to-face, which is pretty interesting. We'll get more into that in a little bit, but our guest is the co-founder and lead technician of Neat Audio, which is a team of audio technology and artist liaison experts committed to servicing the artist's every need regarding studio and touring gear. And they've got a vast array of services, which he'll get into: playback rigs, IM packages, wireless packages, backline equipment, some notable touring acts. You guys may have heard of them: 21 Pilots, NF, Post Malone, and many more. Please welcome to the show my good friend, Mr. TJ Bechill.
Hey, thanks for having me. And once again, just the shock value of finally seeing you face to face talking. I mean, this is 8 years in the making, and maybe, 100, 500 plus conversations down the road. I don't know. It's cool. It's great to be here, and thanks for having me, man.
Well, we and likewise, thanks so much for taking the time. And we've for those of you who obviously don't know, because TJ and I have had many phone calls, as he alluded to, back in the Sweetwater days when I was getting my studio built. And this guy is, and obviously the resume speaks for itself, but one of the best in the business by far. And he's just excellent in everything that he does. Really honored to have him on the show.
Thanks, man.
Well, hey, man, let's get into your beginning stages. I usually kind of open up the show with that, unless things meander in a different direction. But just curious to see how you got into music, how you got into audio, like pro audio, and how you got to kind of where you are now. But just curious.
Absolutely. So the love affair for music starts for me at a really young age. My uncle and my father both were really big into hi-fi systems from their childhood. I mean, they grew up in the 60s, 70s, and they had really impressive home audio systems. So we were always, as kids, listening to music at relatively loud volumes through really, really nice speakers. My uncle, if you're an audio guy and you want to look it up, he had 2 pairs of Infinity RF 4.5s, RS 4. I think it's RF 4.5s. And he cut them in half and he stacked them. It was like 8, 12-inch woofers, and it was all ribbon mid-range. They're called E-mids and emits. Long story short, it was a big thing. Every night we would go and turn on music and we would dance. So I had this love affair with loud music and listening to music every single day. That led into, my parents were also musical. My dad was, played guitar, and my mom played clarinet, whatever. But it was a very musical family, and I was lucky to be raised in a house that encouraged it. So we had several music stores, in the town next to us. So my dad, when I turned, 10 or whatever, he broke out. He had a 1970s Les Paul copy. It was called Bentley. They got sued for making Les Paul custom reissues, but he's like, hey, maybe my son will have an interest in this. So I started playing guitar, and then we go to, Mars Music at the time, Guitar Center, and we start buying everything. We bought guitars, drums, basses, microphones. I had a full stack. We had a ridiculous collection of instruments. I was always around it. And this is like a very interesting turn into, and I'm sorry, this is a long answer, but kind of
it's okay.
It starts explaining this. When I was 15 years old, my dad is a hack of a guitar player. Love you, Dad, but it's not good. But the thing he always taught me is you have to have the right tool for the job. He always wanted to buy an instrument that inspired him to play. You're a player, you get that. Every time you get a new piece of gear, like when you got your Kemper, you wanted to go through and replay everything you've ever played.
Dude, I'm still and let me pause real quick. Yeah, you told me when I bought that, you're like, yeah, you're going to be playing with this. You could be playing with this thing for years and you won't even get through like 10, 15% of what you can do on it. It's true. It is so stupid true. Anyway.
Yeah. But I mean, to have equipment that inspires you to play is huge. So that was kind of his thing. So one day we went to, there's a place in Toledo, Ohio called Peeler Music. My dad wanted to buy a Taylor 914. It's a $5,000 acoustic. Ridiculous for a guy who knows 5 chords. But they told us, okay, yeah, we don't really stock these. You're going to have to go to, you know, a different music store. And they pointed us at Sweetwater. And we lived in a cornfield in Lossion, Ohio. So we're like, all right, we're going to go to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we're going to go, you know, check out these guitars. So we drove over to Sweetwater. This was, like I said, when I was, you know, this is 15 years ago. They were in a small little shop at the time. But we went there, and it was like the coolest music store I'd ever been to. And then they walked me through the recording studio, and the recording studio was a massive console, and, you know, it looked super cool. And I looked at my dad, and I'm like, I want to work there. And literally from the age of 15, I told myself, I'm going to work at Sweetwater Sound when I graduate, because, you know, I can work in the recording studio and they have guitars, and like, it was just this thing. So as it progressed, like through high school, I started, you know, like my first multi-effects pedal was called a Digitech Gnx 3, and it had a solid state recorder built into it with like the, you know, SD card. So I literally was recording everything I was playing. I could put in backing tracks, I could record to it. And then I would take that pedal, because it had 2 microphone inputs in it as well. And I would literally record my marching band in high school through the guitar effects processor. And then I would sell those CDs to the kids in high school so they could have all of the stuff that we were playing in high school. Real primitive stuff now, if you think about it.
Right.
But it got to the point where, you know, college was in question, and I was going to go to Bowling Green in an Ohio school for business, and then try to get in at Sweetwater. My brother's a professor he's the president of a university here in town called the University of St. Francis. We're in the same town as Sweetwater, and Sweetwater puts on this music tech program. And I'm an awful student. I mean, trash. The fact that any college ever accepted me. But this private Catholic university starts up a music technology program through Sweetwater to specifically funnel, you know, guys that go into their program into the music industry and also into Sweetwater. So my brother calls me. He's like, hey, man, you have to come to the school. I was like, dude, I think I had like a 2.6 or whatever. I had a horrible GPA in high school. And I'm like, if you can get me accepted there, great. But I don't know what happened, but I was accepted. I had to go in like academic probation. So they, you know, kept me pretty close to the, you know, the fire there for a while. But lo and behold, I go to school for music production. I double majored. It was music production and technology, and then music business. And it was the first wave of like, now every single college in the world has a music tech program, right? When I was doing it, it was like Full Sail in Berkeley. We're like in MI Music in California. I mean, there weren't a lot at the time. So we were at that first wave of like going to get a music technology degree. And so I do the whole, you know, 4 years of college, and I get into production and studio work. And then I'm like, okay, so what am I going to do? I intern at the recording studio at Sweetwater for a year, and I love it. But I also see the writing on the wall. It's like, I'm in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I am not in the music mecca. I'm not in Nashville. I'm not in New York. I'm not in California. I'm not even a big city, you know? So I saw an opportunity in sales to work around the gear that I have loved so much and be able to talk to fellow musicians and studio guys and gear guys. So I was like, sales is where it's at. I can make money doing this, and I can just talk shop all day. So let's go do that. And then it's funny, kind of like, I'm sorry, this is a long answer, but
no, man, listen, this show is totally freeform.
Yeah, it's kind of fun too. I've actually never told this story in a public forum before, so it's a fun transition.
How about it?
But so I start working at Sweetwater literally the day after I graduate college. It was 2 days later. I graduated on like a Saturday, and I literally sat down at the desk on Monday. So I start working at Sweetwater, and I'm like, I want to focus on studio guys, because that was my gig. You know, I knew studio equipment. I knew that environment. I knew how to, you know, sell for today, but plan for tomorrow. I was always telling, I know I told you this, is like always buy equipment that is going to get you what you need right now, but let's not forget that that's not where you're going to be, 2 months from now. So
100%.
always buy that. Yep. So that conversation happened, and I was like, how do I find these clients? So I instantly turned to social media. I was young at the time. I was probably the youngest employee at Sweetwater at the time, because prior to the whole music technology wave, to get a job at Sweetwater, you had to come in there with a lot of experience, either off the road or coming from a studio. They started hiring, the younger generation, because we had the music tech degree, if you will.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'm on Instagram looking at filters and your hashtags, whatever. And I'm like, hey, studio guys, these are how I find my clients. So I tell Sweetwater's like, you guys need to create an Instagram account. And they're like, why? And I'm like, trust me, just do this. Literally, I started their Instagram page for it.
Wow.
And this spiraled into meeting different networks, right? Sorry, I'm going to play with my hair a lot. Today's the first day I have not wore a hat in probably 2 months. But anyway, I did the studio thing. I was building recording studios and helping clients in the studio side of things for a long time. But one night, my wife and I were bored just watching TV at night. We're watching MTV, something I still find hilarious to this day, because I don't watch a lot of TV and I don't watch MTV. But this is 2012. And they're doing some bands to watch, award show. I don't know what it was, but 21 Pilots comes out on stage, and this is 2012, at the very end of 2012 or beginning of 2013, one of the two. And they come out, and my wife and I are like, these guys are weird. We've never heard of them. We've never seen them. This is just my first blip into their world. Yeah. And I go to Sweetwater the next day. I'm like, I wonder if we work with them, as clients. And I Google their names, I Google their crew to try to figure out who's working with the band at the time. And nobody was there in our database at Sweetwater. So I send a Facebook message out to their front of house engineer. His name's Ben. And I said, hey, my name's TJ. I work at Sweetwater. Saw your show last night. Would love to work with you guys. And boom, all of a sudden we started talking. He started relying on me heavily for all their equipment. And it was right when Stressed Out, who just crossed 2 billion streams on YouTube, I think, this past week.
When did that come out again?
I think it was 2013.
I can't believe it's been 7 years since that came out.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking, Stressed Out is, God, I should know this. Yeah, that's Vessel.
I can I'll Google it. You can I'll check. I just can't. The past decade is just, it's like a blur.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's either Vessel or Blurryface, but regardless, when I started working with them, it was right at the beginning of their peak. And I'm sorry to keep bringing them up as a reference, but this will all come full circle.
2015.
2015. Okay, so I was working with them before Stressed Out came out. Then
okay,
it was the Vessel album that they were on at the time, but they started getting notoriety. They started blowing up in mainstream media. But they were touring all the time. I mean, that band literally never stopped.
Right.
And the cool part is they started relying on me pretty heavily for other gear purchases. But the thing that made everything turn in my entire life, and I say that not loosely because it changed everything for me, was they needed a playback rig. They called me one night, and they were out on tour with Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco, and the subwoofers on stage had shaken Josh, the drummer's computer, into safety mode, because that's back when computers had spinning hard drives and disks in them, and it shut their show down. So they called me, and they're like, we need a playback rig, we need this to work. So I spent some time with Ben, their front of house engineer, and Josh, the drummer, who was also their Ableton guy, and we built this playback rig. Well, there was only 2 guys in the band that understood how it worked. It was Josh and then Ben. Ben left the band, and as a result, I was the only one in the crew that understood how the rig worked. And they relied heavily on me to come out and fix everything. So this started me touring, just weekend things.
Right.
But as a result of being out on the road with them for the weekends, they would start introducing me to other bands that they were touring with. So this network, which I had really no experience in. I was not a touring guy. I had been in a band, but I'd never toured. I've never mixed a live show in my life. But we started doing this whole playback thing. And as I start touring, Jason, what I'm realizing is when I go out to Nashville, mind you, I'm a Sweetwater guy, right? I'm in
Mhm.
Nashville and it's a Saturday and I need equipment. I have nowhere to go because there's not a lot of music stores and there's no one to talk to. I was kind of like stuck. I'm like, I need a Sweetwater rep, right? So I saw a void in the market. I saw an opportunity that these touring guys don't really have someone to like constantly lean on.
Right.
So literally it wasn't an overnight decision necessarily, but it was like a very quick realization that there's a massive market for the touring community that doesn't exist, to have this like 24/7 artist liaison to lean on. So I started switching my database from like your hobbyist guitar players and, home studios to touring guys. And I focused on it for 6 years. It was 2013 to 2018, 19 when I left. And over those 6 years, I accrued a client list of 300 national touring acts that leaned on me for everything. And they could call me at 3 o'clock in the morning and on a Sunday, and I would pick up. My clients are not used to calling me and not having me pick up within the first, couple rings. And I've dedicated my life to opening an avenue for them to be able to just not have to worry about acquiring gear. They just like, hey, I'm just going to call him. I don't care what time of day it is. He's going to pick up. He's going to handle it so they can get back onto their lives.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was like getting into playback rigs. I was like, okay, I can specialize this because every single band needs one. I think Ryan Adams is the only client I've ever worked with out of the 300 that does not have a playback rig. They are all analog. They don't even have wireless mics. They plug in. Everything is hardwired. But every other artist that I've worked with, they're like, yeah, I mean, we could use a playback rig, or yes, I could use playback rig to control the guitar player's pedal board, so he doesn't have to run across the stage to turn on a delay or a boost for his solo, whatever. So I spent, almost every weekend of my life for 6 years. I'd work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. And then when Friday night hit, I was gone. I was either in Chicago, I was in Michigan, Detroit, St. Louis, New York, California, Nashville. And I was bouncing around doing 80 some shows a year while maintaining my Sweetwater gig. Then it kind of like breaks down to a point 2 years ago where I just had so many clients asking me to come out on the road or being more available to them, and I couldn't balance the two. Some investors stepped forward and created an opportunity for me to build Neat as it is today to exist. Right. So I'm pretty much doing the same thing that I was doing at Sweetwater, but now I can work from home and I can travel wherever and whenever I want with no limitations. So, sorry, that was an incredibly long answer.
No,
but
that's a great answer. So it's really specific for it's a similar format to how when you were working at Sweetwater, like you said, but it's just more specific for those specialty, hi-fi setups, or just
Yeah, it turned into like, I obviously can't do every single thing because I'm not like a vendor. I don't like have inventory of gear, but I have relationships. So I can get gear to anybody that needs it, but I'm also able to show up and with a complete rig now, instead of like saying, hey, call me and I'll send you everything and good luck building it and I hope it works. You'll call me, it's like, hey, here's what I need. And I'm like, okay, here's your solution. I'll build it. I'll come out. I'll train your crew how to use it. And then I'll troubleshoot it down the road. But it's like, it's kind of terrifying now to think what I used to put my clients through of like, hey, I'm going to send you, 100 boxes of gear. I hope you can put it together. And it's at a certain level that stops and you have to be able to support it. And that's kind of where Neat is. So, we're all over the place. We'll do whatever the client needs, but playback rigs, tour automation, wireless packages, stuff that touring groups need to kind of live and maintain.
Well, that's awesome. Do you have, going back for a second, were there any main influences that really contributed to your inspiration in the early years? And it could be musicians or live shows that you saw that were just knockout amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it always travels back to the energy, the emotion, the dopamine of volume and bass in your chest, right?
Yeah.
So we always loved going to my uncle's house because he had all the subs, right? And he had the big format systems. So my dad and my whole family, really, we started going out and seeing shows when we were kids. And, that moment when the lights go out and the sound hits you and it's like that rush it's been a high I've chased my entire life.
Right.
So when I was able to find the link to connect my professional life to my personal interest of that moment, there is nothing, there's a lot of moments in my life, like, having kids, getting married, all that stuff. But I'll never forget, there was a show that I had to build a time code into a playback session, literally like an hour before the show happened. And it was like my time code triggers the lighting console at front of house. So we had a video that was brought in. My time code at the playback track triggers that video to start. We didn't get to do a test drive of it. We just put it in the rig and we just hope it worked, right? And I'll never forget, we were sitting in an arena in Columbus, Ohio, in front of 20,000 people. Lights go out, bass line rips, and my video's on the screen and everything's working. And I'm like, we just connected those two moments, the start of the show and the energy of live touring and, live performance, and the work that I did to make it all happen. Yeah. And regardless of how small of a hand that might have been in that process, that told me I was doing the right thing. My wife saw like the look in my eyes and saw the work come together, and she's like, you go and do this. And she was 100% supportive. I mean, we've got a family, we've got 2 kids, and she is totally cool with me being gone, doing what I have to do to make it work, because she knows what that does for me. And like, how much joy that brings me and everybody who's, I guess, in that show and in that moment. But, yeah, my inspirations was truly kind of, I kind of always like laugh and tell my dad, is like, your stupid stereo, I just love bass. I love the energy. I love the crowd. I love the environment. I love loud music. And I was able to find a passion that connected it all.
What, working with some of these big names, if we could just talk a little bit about, these are huge names in this day and age. Post Malone, sure. NF, 21 Pilots. I don't even know where to start with asking you questions. I don't want to bombard you with questions.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
But just a little bit of like description as far as what that's like, and if you've met them personally. I know you met 21 Pilots personally, but some of the other guys. I just I've got a couple of stories or anything.
Yeah, so it's weird in the touring market. When I got involved, there was a lot of people that I met, and I'm like, hey, what's it like to work with this artist? And some of them are like, I don't care. Like some of the people that I meet out on the road, they're like, I don't even want to meet them. They don't want to meet their boss. They just want to do their job,
right,
and go, right.
Get the invoice.
Yeah, they just want to do their job and get through it and be done with it.
Right.
And for me, I'm just like, I don't know. It's not that I'm like, there's no starstruck element of it, but it's like, look, that guy, he's the one that writes the music that gets us all here. Like, what's his home studio like? I mean, my gears are spinning in a totally different direction. Like, I want to nerd out with these people, because the funniest thing is, like, a lot of these artists, you look at the process, and that's like, it's just the way I think. I want to know, like, when I listen to an album, how was that album created? And like, what was that guy going through? What was 21 Pilots, Post Malone, or, any of my clients that, I've worked with, like, what does this environment look like for them? And then subjectively, like internally, I want to be like, how can I make it better? How can I change that or whatever?
Right.
But I have found working with artists of any caliber that they're just very interesting people. There's not a lot of like boring musicians that I've met. And it's not like this. It's not like the lifestyle that I think we're all like, we grew up seeing like the Eddie Van Halens and the Axl Roses and stuff like that, right? That I think that lifestyle's gone. I have yet to run into a band that's like the party that, I think we all grew up thinking,
right,
the music industry was. But more or less what I find joy and value in, if an artist will let me into their life, creatively speaking, just talking about gear and talking about their process. What I love to do is like see how they write, and once again, can I get involved in that and somehow?
Right.
Personal examples. So Tyler Joseph from 21 Pilots, Josh Dunn, the drummer. they both have home studios. And, you know, there are some bands that will not record at home. They have to go out to the studio because it separates them from their home life to put them in work mode. Like I've met Nate from NF. I don't personally know him, but I have been told that he does not work at home. He works with a producer. He works in a studio, and he's wrote. Maybe I'm wrong on that. It's just like what I've been told. But with like Tyler from Twin Pilots, he hit me up at the end of I don't know. It was like right around the end of Blurry Face. You know, massive album. He's like, hey, you know, I've been on the road for 3 years, whatever. He's like, I don't want to spend the next year in someone else's studio writing an album. I want to be home. So the fun part of that for me was he let me into his creative life. I could see how he could record. I could figure out how much he knows about gear and how he utilizes gear. That way I was able to get, you know, in the dirt with him to say, here's what we can do to take you to the next level, but preserve the process.
Right.
Jack Antonoff from Bleachers, who's, if you're not familiar with him, Google him, because he's been in the band Fun. He's in Bleachers. I mean, but the most important, like, I think not important, but the coolest aspect is how many songs he's wrote and helped produce. I mean, he's done Taylor Swift, Lana Del Rey. I mean, the list is ridiculous. But he made a comment once that I like literally will always hold on to. He's like, preserve your process. He's like, no matter where you go in the music industry, whether you're like at the ground level, just playing in someone's basement, all the way up to selling arenas. He's like, you think that it scales like, okay, and this is how I do it now, and this is how I do it now. He's like, something that I internally try to focus on is never change the process. He's like, write a song as a superstar at the A level, the same way you wrote a song in the beginning that made you who you are.
In the garage.
He's like, you were creative then, keep that going. And like, it's interesting. There are artists that I am excited to see. Perfect example, Billie Eilish. Her entire last album was recorded in her brother's studio in his house.
Yeah.
That album is massive.
Yeah.
Now that she has so much clout behind her and so much interest, will she record the next album the same way? Or will she go to a major studio with a bunch of producers, writers? Who knows? But you can start, if you follow an artist long enough, you can either see them, you know, change over the years because the process changes. You know, was the creative element different for them? Because that is part of their core. You know, no one is like, no one flips a switch and says, I'm going to be a producer. It's something that, or you know, like an artist. That artistry is in their soul and in their core. It just takes, I guess, time for them to figure out how to put it to paper, how to get it into a song. But I think we all start the same. You know, you get a little interface in your bedroom and you start recording and it goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, these major artists, I'm sorry, I'm going way off.
No, it's great stuff, man.
Yeah. These major artists, I always just want to be like, hey, what's your process like? Like, tell me, like, how do you get here? You know, did you go out to major studios? Did you do everything at home? Do you write on the road? You know, and it's kind of fun. A couple of my artists, I've had the privilege to just sit and watch them work, and they'll pull out a cell phone that has a memos app that's just pages of like 30-second blips. And for someone who doesn't write, like, yeah, it's
bad.
But that's literally how I see so many of these artists work. I mean, we'll be walking down the sidewalk and they'll pull their phone out and start singing into it, completely oblivious of the world around them. And they're like, okay, cool. Put it in their phone. We keep going. And I'm like, do I talk? I was like, what was that? You know, they're like, no, it's just an idea. Yeah. I'm a musician, but I'm not a writer. I don't like write my own music. Haven't got there yet. But that part of their artistry kind of like still impresses me. But
it's crazy because you know, I think a lot of people would agree that are wired like I am. You can't turn it off, so you got to get it when it's there. It's like I got to get it down now. I could forget it if I don't get it down now, and even if it's that 20-second bit or that 10-second bit, it could turn into something.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I've got 100 stories of working with these artists, but I think my interest and my takeaway with them is like, what, and they probably don't even notice that that's what I'm probably trying to focus on when I talk to them. But I'm like, hey, obviously I'm interested in you as a person, but as well, we're here to talk about music. How do you work? And
Right.
that's still fascinating to me. And that's something that I still kind of like focus on when I'm interacting with my clients. So yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship then. Even though you've pretty much covered it with kind of the business model that you created, but I'll kind of merge it with two bullet points: entrepreneurship and dealing with the pressures of the industry.
Yeah.
Especially in your field where, and you know how it is, hurry up and wait. You're always going to get blamed for everything that goes wrong, even if you weren't even like there remotely at the time when it went wrong or touched that part of the chain or the system.
Right.
So just dealing with that and just the grind, so to speak, and
Sure. Yeah.
the pressures.
It was a total transition for me. I came from a world where I had to worry about my clients and sales, and that was it. I had a shipping department, I had a marketing department, I had human resources, I had a cafeteria, I had a gym, I had everything. It was if you've never been to Sweetwater, it's literally the coolest complex in the world.
Yeah, I've heard.
But I had everything at my disposal. And then I leave and I create Neat, and I will never forget the first day. It was a wild day, by the way. When we decided to do Neat, I decided I had to move. I had bought a house in 2010. Love that house, but my studio / office was right outside of my kids' bedrooms. And so we were like, we got to move. I got to get a bigger house, more space, and I need a house with an office. So the same day I put in my 2 weeks notice at Sweetwater was the same day I moved into this house. Anyway, I work, I finish out the 2 weeks at Sweetwater, and I wake up the next morning, my first day, I guess, at Neat. And I was standing in the kitchen, staring out my kitchen window, just like, shit, what do I do today? And dude, it killed me. I come from an incredibly regimented, like 9 to 5. I know exactly what I'm doing from 9 to 5. Now it's like, for a long time, I was like, what do I do? And I was calling my investors. I was calling a couple other, business owners. I'm like, this is driving me nuts. I hate this. And they're like, no, trust me. It's like go golfing. Just it'll work itself out.
Wow.
And then within 2 weeks, I left and I went on tour for a month, just doing playback stuff. Then I came back and I'm like, okay, we're back to life as normal. I'm like, how do I drive this business? Because it's not something that I've had to like focus on. My referral network was so large at Sweetwater, I wasn't actively pursuing clients. I would just get a text, hey, TJ, this is blah from this band. He needs this. Hook them up and off to the races. Boom. And that was every single day for, 5-6 years. And a lot of those clients, followed me over to Neat, and we're still talking daily. But it was like, what do I do in my downtime now? Because I don't have the metrics of my previous life behind me. And it just took, it felt like a month of just like kind of like sitting with my hands in my pockets and not really sure what to do. But I had to put on a marketing hat. I had to put on, all of the hats that I didn't have to wear in my previous life to say, we have to grow this. So we took to social media, we took to, Instagram, Facebook, and now we're like starting to do like Google ads and sponsored things. Cause I know I'm capable of doing the work. You could be a band playing in front of your parents for fun, or you could be selling out the next stadium. I am confident that I can work with everyone in between. But we just need to find who we're going to work with and how.
Right.
So the music industry is all word of mouth. It's all word, like referrals. There's not a like put your diploma here and we'll call you. It's it's like, hey, we need a playback guy. Someone on the crew raises their hands like, TJ from Neat, call him. Boom, that's how I get a gig. So I think like the entrepreneur, like business driver, the change of climate for me is just trying to stay constantly busy. And then, Corona happens and completely derails literally everything. So then we just adapted. We're like, okay, we're going back to building recording studios, and we're then going to talk to our touring clients that are now home. It's like, hey, you need two things. You need gear to record with, and let me talk to you about your process so I can make sure that you get what you need. Yeah. And on the second side of that, hey, did you know that we can take all your recording equipment and plug you into a live stream? That way you can still have FaceTime with your audiences while we're all at home.
Right.
That's the transition we're in right now. And it's, it's, like I said, it was so slow a couple of weeks ago, but it's starting to pick back up and starting to feel a lot better.
Do you have any favorite records?
Oof.
And
yeah.
If so, which ones?
So I grew up on Tears for Fears and Pink Floyd. So that is a weird, transition, if you will. That was probably, when Pulse came out in '94.
Both
Pink
bass
Floyd.
heavy,
Yeah, Groove City, man. I'm pop rock. My dad was big into, Styx, REO Speedwagon, funk for days. Big funk guy. So yeah, I grew up in the classic, rock and roll era, but it's weird. If you're not a Tears for Fears fan, then it might, you probably know Shout and Everybody Wants to Rule the World. But
right.
If you want to know where my foot starts tapping, there's a song called Bad Man Song from Tears for Fears, and it is all over the place. It was classic rock, but still has funk elements in it. It's all over the place. But yeah, Pulse, the live album from Pink Floyd. I have, I'm a CD guy, but if it was a record, I would have burned it out, playing it 100 times over. And then everything from Tears for Fears was kind of my go-to. I just lived on that. And then I got into the emo stage of things. Him and CK. I was a skateboarder when I was a kid. So Bam Margera and the Jackass guys, they had there was a band that followed them around called Him and CKY, Rasmas, those kind of bands. I'm trying to think of albums. Unfortunately, I was the Napster generation, so I always had MP3 players with thousands of songs. So I wasn't
Lars Ulrich is stroking out somewhere right now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's funny. So yeah, I wasn't popping a CD in or carrying around my cassette. I would just plug my, I had the first iPod when it came out, just plug that in my CD player and go. So my head doesn't think of albums per se, more or less than just genres and time periods of my life. Right. Probably not what you wanted to hear, but yeah, it's I'm unfortunately.
No, it's I try to throw that one in there for anybody who's on the show, the music industry. Best and worst gig experiences for you, if you have one of each, as far as just Cloud 9, and I'm sure you've had a lot of those, and then it's a total horror nightmare show, and you don't need to throw any names out there, but just curious.
Sure. For me right now, a lot of my great, and my best experience was getting the ability to go play Red Rocks
oh wow
in Denver. And my wife and I, we flew out to Denver. We were with a band that played 2 nights, and we stayed we got in the night prior. We woke up first thing in the morning, and we watched the whole load in. But that venue is amazing just because the scenery is beautiful. Don't get me wrong. Red Rocks is, it's great, but the history of that building is amazing too. And everything backstage is underground in the cave, if you will, the rock. And the way that you get from backstage to front of house is through this tunnel. And if you play there as an artist or crew member, you get to sign the wall. So,
oh, cool.
That was really cool. I've also done Madison Square Garden in New York. That's also just a highlight. Every artist, when you get to play MSG, is just we made it, it's a moment for them. So it was cool to be with my client at the time when that happened. But that also ties into one of the worst experiences. For me, I've got 6 years of previous life, and then I'm fresh into the 2 years of NEAT, right? But when I used to travel, it was always on weekends. So I would always book trips that I could get in and out of quickly. Madison Square Garden, I was there for 3 days, but when we left, I had 7 plane cancellations, and I was stuck in New York with, at the time, my pregnant wife in a New York airport for 3 days. So, I mean, yeah, realistically, I don't have a ton of negative experiences. But
oh God,
I got stuck in an airport for 3 days, and I'll just never forget, like, am I ever going to get home? And like I said, we found out my wife was pregnant. So the drama element of that was,
right.
Significantly higher than it probably should have been at the time, but it was, whatever. But yeah, no, like I said, the best experience is just like the coolest places I've been able to go and see my work come alive. And then the worst experience is just when I get stuck and can't
leave. The arenas real quick.
Yeah.
As far like clubs versus arenas and the sound in general, anybody who's awake, anybody who's aware, you don't have to be a musician. It's like, oh, well, it's much more challenging in a large room. Just perhaps some of your thoughts on, I don't know, how bands can prepare for that, dealing with the latency, perhaps dealing with the everything is just different from a large stage to a smaller.
I just say the execution, like, it's fun when you get to the arena level. Transitions are huge.
Right.
How do you get from one song to the next and command a space? It's weird. I always look at artists and in the downtime, because like when you get to an arena show, if you've ever been to one, they're typically theatrical. I mean, you're putting on a music show, but you're also putting on this visual element, and because it's so large, you're trying to not just like be 5 guys or whatever standing on a stage standing still. There's a lot of movement.
Right.
So things that I always say, you have to have the gear to make it work. Wireless in your packages. You can't take the wireless that you played at, your church, your garage and bar, and then throw it in front of 30,000 people and think that everything is going to work well. That has been one of the biggest growing pains that I see my clients go through. Is we'll take a band that's played in front of 5,000 people, and then all of a sudden they get an opening slot for a band playing in front of 20,000 people. And then it's just massive, the space that you put in between your gear, right? So now you have to have a wireless rig that's going to be able to hold up that kind of distance and signal strength. And also, arenas don't exist in small towns. They're always in bigger cities, right? As a result, you're combating a lot more frequencies. So if you don't have the frequency spectrum or a wide enough selection of open frequencies, your gear is going to be fighting radio stations, TV stations, other venues, other bands, bars, everything around. So yeah, if you're a band that you think you're going to get there, once again, what I already said, buy for today, plan for tomorrow. Right. If you buy the cheapest wireless series and you think you're going to go, you're going to be buying another wireless series. It sucks as a sales guy to say this to people, but you buy nice or you buy twice. But that to say that, the cheaper gear, it's all about scalability. Is it going to grow with you?
Right.
The other thing is like transitions. So there was a tour that I was out on. We spent a month in rehearsals, 3 weeks huh?
I believe it, because being from the musical theater world when I was younger, you do 2 weeks of tech rehearsals. It was, mind numbing.
Yeah. This particular arena tour, like I said, it was a month long, 3 weeks. It was like 2 weeks lighting, getting all the lighting and everything figured out, programming and trimming. 1 week for audio, basically, where the audio guys were just setting their new PA, testing it, running through everything. And then the last week was just purely the artist on stage running through the show. I'm talking 12-hour days of running through this same show over and over and over again. Wow. Because how do you get from one part of the stage to the next and time it out right? shows that I've been to where I'm amazed that I haven't had a chance to see like the tech rehearsals for, like Justin Timberlake and Ariana Grande are two that have massive stages that have a ton of like moving parts and a lot of crew on stage. And they are always every night at the same place at the same time moving around. That comes with cues in your ears where they're telling, Justin, okay, stage left, stage right, up stage, down stage, go here, go there. And the dancers are all getting cues in their ears, but to execute it, to see it go off and done well, just takes time.
Right.
So yeah, what I experience in the music industry is everything is almost last second. I'll get a phone call. It's like, hey man, we need a playback rig for this upcoming tour. Like, cool. When do you need it? We're like, well, tomorrow would be great. And I was like, okay, think ahead,
Right.
And we're probably going to get there, but that's part of like what I am telling my clients now. As like, we have never had this much free time in our entire life. Take this as an opportunity to think about, make a 5-year plan. Say, hey, here's what I want to do when this all opens up. Here's where I want to be next year. Do you have the gear to make it work? Do you know how you want to make it work? Start having these conversations, because it's a conversation and we all have time for it.
Right. Well,
So,
we can definitely go there. It's one of the last bullet points I've got, which is just future plans / COVID. And I've asked everybody this question, and nobody really knows except for the time and just the opportunity. And I had a choice to make of whether I was going to hold off on the show, because I was really into my multi-camera angle and all that setup and the HD cameras and everything. And it's like, yeah, but we don't know when this is going to lift off.
Right.
I don't know when I'm going to be in a room with somebody again. So this has been one of the biggest opportunities for the show is just having a bunch of great people on like yourself, and everybody's sitting around. Everybody does want to talk, or 99% of people want to talk, which is cool. So that trend, I've seen it in my own sphere. For you, as you've alluded to earlier, what do you think the future plans are as far as what's coming up next?
Right now, it's a knee-jerk reaction. The last 4 weeks for me have been walking clients through like, hey, I get a phone call. Hey man, I'm bored. I'm thinking about writing at home. Help me out. Because like Nashville, there were pretty strict rules. There was a band that I was working with that like has to stagger their parking across like parking lots and streets so they don't realize that they're all getting together in a studio.
Wow.
So they're making it happen. But there's a lot of bands that I work with where, the singers in, North Carolina, the drummers in Florida, whatever is in California. And they're like, but we're all home and we want to record. So they all call me and they're like, what kind of equipment can we all get to make a studio experience for us?
Yeah.
So
just fly stuff. Yeah. Just fly.
Yeah. It's like just, internet. Yep. It's like record it, send it, and they're piggybacking, bouncing off of each other so they can get their studio stuff to work. So there's a lot of hand holding in that. Once again, just walking my clients through like, here's the gear you need. Here's how we can implement it. From the playback side of things, it's all, you take that same guy, the artist that can't tour anymore, and they're like, hey, we want to talk about studio stuff. I just always shoot it in there. I'm like, hey, we have no idea when this is going to happen. But when it's done, do you have any idea what your game plan is going to be? Like, are you going to try to go out and tour again? If so, where are you at on that?
Yeah.
Let's have the conversation now, because I think the problem that I think is going to happen is nobody knows when it's going to end, right? And when they decide to open the gates, nobody knows what it's going to be like. Are they going to say free for all, everybody go out, do what you want? Or from like a public event, like a touring standpoint, are they going to have 100 cap rooms only or 500 cap rooms? Nobody knows. My whole point is, as an artist, you don't want to, wait till that moment and then react. You
Right.
want to have whatever you think you want to do, start planning on it now. That way, when this gate opens, you're ready to hit the ground running.
Right.
You know, the last thing you want to do as an artist is like, I think I'm going to just wait and see what happens, because everyone is so eager to get back out and tour that, I mean, the touring industry is at a complete halt right now, but when it opens up, we will be busier than we have ever been before.
Yeah.
So yeah, if there's a message to my artists, and if there's like things that I'm thinking of, is like, how can I be prepared for the massive influx of interest that touring will have when this is all said and done? So we're building rental rigs. I've got playback rigs just sitting in, you know, my studio, just waiting for someone to call and say, hey, we're going to go on the road. I need a rig tomorrow. But, you know, it's in the office. So that's happening. But yeah, between helping my studio guys out, doing, you know, preparing for the touring to come back out. But yeah, one plug, Exhale Creative. If you haven't heard of him, check him out. DJ Lipscomb is the brains behind that company. He is a streaming guy who, you know, he's a content creator. I'm sorry. He's more like a video director. He's done a lot of content for, you know, Rupert Neve, SE Electronics. The list goes on and on. But what he's doing is he's helping me work with the video side of a streaming platform. You've got a, you know, recording studio full of gear. How can I take that gear and then put it into a digital platform to help stream in front of live artists?
Right.
So Exhale Creative and Neat have came together in the past month, and we're helping artists like figure out how to make that happen, because, you know, sitting and doing nothing is, I think it's terrifying. And I'm sure as an artist, you know, who's used to performing every night, it's got to be a completely different feeling than what I'm having. But it's really easy to stream, and we're just here to help. So,
Yeah.
sorry, I just completely swiped my mic off my desk. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. That's going to be fun. That blooper reel. But yeah, that's something that we've been working on too. And that's kind of like, I think our future is just, we have no idea how long we're going to be in on this. So just trying to help with streaming, help with studios, and get ready for touring again.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's just, your story's so unique. It's really cool. We didn't talk about lighting to a certain degree before we start kind of wrapping up. Just, I don't know, a couple of thoughts on lighting, and man, does it make a difference?
Oh, huge. I mean, I honestly, like, there was a couple shows that I went to that completely changed my opinion on the effectiveness of lighting. Because, you know, growing up, I'm used to seeing, you know, rock bands that didn't really have like crazy lighting. I think part of my love affair when I was a kid with Pink Floyd was the visual side of it. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
This really brings out, you know, an element of performance. But I started seeing bands that I could look at and I would say, okay, let's take all the production value away. Is this still entertaining?
Right.
And there are bands that I have seen that I could say, no, like this would be really awkward.
Right.
Without everything else going on behind it. So, I mean, there are artists that look at their lighting director or their lighting rig as the other member of the band, because it's all about this like performance in this show that you're putting on, right? So yeah, like personally in my world, I don't do a ton of like lighting implementation, just because like at a certain level, it is so intensive that, you know, for me being an audio guy, I just, my world will control lighting. What I mean by that is SMPTE time code.
Triggering.
I can send that. Yeah, I can trigger
automation.
Content.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's fine. So I work with a lot of LDs in making sure that a band says, okay, hey, here's our playback rig, here's our backing tracks. We need it to communicate with LD's world. So what I'll do is I'll sit with them and we'll program the time code tracks into their playback tracks to make sure that it's all synced and ready. And that gets us into rehearsals, because, I mean, with larger scale productions, that's like a big chunk of rehearsals, is letting the lighting director go through the show and make sure all the cue points are on at the right spot.
Right.
So that's kind of the only involvement that I have nowadays with the lighting world is my playback tracks and my time code will help assist triggering and setting the show off. But yeah, I mean, lighting is massive, and I can't.
So massive.
The automation. Red Hot Chili Peppers 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago. They have a kinetic lighting system where the entire ceiling of the arena is like moving lights. Glow Motion is an amazing company. If you haven't, well, you've probably seen them. If you've seen any Super Bowl event, I think for the last 3 or 4 years.
Well, I saw the Chili Peppers on not that tour, but I think it was back in like 2011, and I think they were using it then.
Yeah,
it was insane, man.
I had not seen a show with a kinetic system before. I had seen the Red Hot Chili Pepper show, and I'm like, man, I'm not even looking at the band half the time. I'm looking at everything moving on around me. Maybe that's like they're a bunch of old guys now. Maybe they're just like, hey, look at the lights. We'll play, but look at the lights.
Until the socks on the cocks. But even then, it's like, it's so far away. It's like,
yeah, it's the lighting element. Like I said, I've seen shows that I'm like, I left. I'm like, man, the production of this was so fascinating. Like, did I leave focusing on the music, or I'm analytical when it comes to shows, but I've definitely left shows where I'll remember the visual side of it more than I'll remember the audio. But yeah, dude, it's massive. I wish I knew more about lighting and how their whole world works. But it's like, that's their world. Have at it.
Well, as we kind of wrap up, I've got a fun little thing I like doing at the end where it's I call it like the popcorn round or the shootout, which is I'll just say a word that's industry related to your niche in the business, and you just fire back a word or a phrase that like just first comes to mind. It's a judgment-free zone, no right or wrong answers, just kind of like you go for it. Audio.
Ooh, technology. Sorry.
It's good. No, it's good. Live.
Concerts. That's like elementary. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. No. Again, no right or wrong. Studio
monitors.
Oh.
Yeah. Speakers.
Yamahas. That's not. I'm just saying it. That's not. That's too biased. Vocal mic.
Lawton.
What was that?
Lawton.
Never heard of it.
Oh, check them out, man. Lawton Audio is a fantastic mic manufacturer. Yeah, I was just talking to somebody about him, so sorry.
No, that's cool. Drums.
Ooh. Rolling TD50.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're rolling guy, right?
Yeah, the 11Ks.
Yeah.
11KV. When I use them.
I'm an electric guy.
Yeah, I use them on I use them to trigger Slate.
Yeah.
Which you set me up with years ago, which is great. Haven't used that system in a couple of years, but I've been doing a lot of acoustic real stuff with a bunch of mics, which is fun. But dude, that's great. Either way, because the main reason why I got the electric was because I was in New York and I had to just crank stuff out, and it's New York. Everybody's living on top of each other.
Right.
Bass.
Ooh, Fender P-Bass.
Somebody else said P-Bass like earlier this week. It's like getting thrown around a lot. It's cool. I'm an Ernie Ball guy. I like the Stingray. Oh,
dude, they are amazing. I was talking to somebody about that the other day. He's a P-Bass guy. He's like, hey, I keep getting told to check out Ernie Ball. I'm like, it's a heightened playing experience. I think the only thing that's working against them is they just kind of look a little goofy.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't like the look of them? I think they look amazing. It's so weird. I've heard that before from somebody.
I think they look amazing and they sound fantastic and they play. Oh my God, their roasted maple necks that they have on those are just ridiculous. But as a bass player, my first guitar was a Les Paul Custom because that's what I grew up seeing people play.
Right.
If you're a bass player, you've seen jazz basses and P basses in everyone's hands because it's kind of like the standard, right? And then Ernie Ball is like, wham! Like, this is a different look. It's really cool, but it's really different,
Oh, I think it looks so cool with those giant ass tuning pegs, and it's like, I'll take it. Did I ever show you the one that I got where my parents basically gave me? It wasn't like an ultimatum, but they said, "Well, you're turning 16. We're giving you one gift, and it's either your first down payment on a car, like a used car, or we'll get you an Ernie Ball bass." I was like, "Yeah, I'm definitely getting the bass."
Done.
Yeah. So, and it's been with me since that's a decade now.
That's awesome.
Maple neck too. I'll take a picture of it for you. Yeah, it's so nasty. Electric guitar.
Oh, Fender. And I say that I just got it, dude.
I thought you were going to say PRS because your PRS like porn shots.
Yeah,
dude.
Well,
like,
it's not looking that good, but I just got a new Strat. Sorry, it's on this side. Rosewood neck. It's probably not going to be all that clear, but
here, hold on. Let me make okay. You're full screen now.
Yeah. So this is a Fender mod shop, and I never thought that I would get a guitar with Rosewood. Every single one of my 20 guitars is maple necks, and my favorite neck wood is bird's eye maple. I like that really dry, fast maple. But I don't remember what model it was. There was an all Rosewood Telecaster that came out several years ago. It was like $9,000. Sweetwater had one, and I played it, and I'm like, man, this Rosewood neck feels so good. Like 2 months ago, my buddy from Fender turns me on to Mod Shop, which is you can completely customize a guitar, and it doesn't cost significantly more. But Rosewood neck and fingerboard was an option, and it wasn't like an upcharge. I'm like, I have to have it. So, anywho, I just got that guitar, and I just bought a Fender Princeton amp, and I'm on cloud nine.
I bet.
I haven't played this much in probably 10 years.
I bet, man. Acoustics. Or acoustic
Taylor.
guitar.
I'm a Taylor guy. My dad and I, he's got 2 Taylor 914s, and I tried for years to fall in love with Martin. I'm not a singer-songwriter, so, I get it. If I'm in the studio and someone comes in with an HD28, love that guitar. But for me to sit and play sonically, I don't know. Gibson Songwriter Deluxe is another acoustic that I absolutely love. But Taylor 9 series or 8 series or even the 3 series, it's got a tonal balance to me. I've got a 314.
Yeah,
314s are fantastic. I love it.
A lot of scoop in the mid range. I find on the Taylors, it's very, very low end, and which is not a bad thing. It's just a sound.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's the player experience. Maybe that's something like, a guitar that you just rip into a chord and it resonates to your body. Maybe it's that extra bass that is loved so much. I don't know. But
Martin's, to me, my dad has a like a 1972 D38 or something like that. That thing is loud, man. That thing's got it's just like it's almost like it's got this weird natural low and high filter to it, and it's just like mid-range, like, oh man, it's incredible.
Nice.
But the Taylor is definitely more like low with kind of like a mid-range scoop. And I've got this little Epiphone hummingbird thing for like $400. That thing's pretty cool, and it plays so well. Like the action's so low.
Right.
Anyway, keys.
I'm not much of a keyboard player, but I really love the Roland stuff. I'm a Roland fanboy for sure. Roland, RD2000, RD3000, maybe. Roland.
Yeah, same. All right, so we're gonna start getting into the good shit.
Let's go.
Compression.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, compressor.
Or compressor.
Neve, master bus compressor. That SFE at the end. Oh my God, just ridiculous. It's mixed. Some people say they want a compressor that's clean, that just does its job, but a lot of people obviously you want a compressor of character, and that red channel, blue channel, and the saturation that you can get inside of the 50, or it's not that I'm not 5059 isn't it? That's the summing mixer. I can't remember what the model number is off the top of my head. The MVP, master bus compressor.
Yeah,
my favorite. Yeah, that was one of my first compressors.
I am such a character guy. It's ridiculous. Like basically, if it doesn't do anything, I don't want it. Yeah, like, I literally don't even want to have anything to do with it. If it's not changing the sound and manipulating it to a certain degree, unless it's like there's some reason why I can't have it on there. Like if it's going to really mess up a frequency range or bring out something that I don't want. Yeah.
My favorite, I guess for mixing sessions and stuff in general, the Neve, TubeTech CL1B is my go-to vocal chain. Put a 1073, BAE 1073 or Neve vintage, whatever, into a TubeTech CL1B. That is my favorite vocal chain. If we're talking about drum bus, distressors, or API 2500.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I've been doing the API 2500 parallel for years, and it's just amazing. Well, I still have the same chain that you got me hooked onto, the Heritage 1073 with the lunchbox, and I've got my buddy gave me one of those Lewitt U47 clones. It's like the LCT 940.
Right,
bro.
Money.
Going into the 1073, and I got one of those little Clark Technic LA2A. Dude, come on, man, for $350, and it sounds like 98% like an LA2A. It's a joke. So hitting a lot of tubes before Pro Tools, or I'll hit it in Pro Tools and just kind of print it later,
Sure.
Anyway, it's a dangerous section for the two of us. EQ.
See, you know what? You're going to call me crazy. Maybe not. I've never really played around with hardware EQs a lot, just because there can be so mechanical that I don't want to make absolute decisions until I have everything ready. So unfortunately, I don't have a favorite on that one, because I never played around with them. I always used plugins or software.
Maybe a console EQ or something.
Oh.
If you had to, let's just say just a standard console EQ. Maybe there's a favorite brand that, I mean, for me, it would probably be the 1073.
Yeah, in the EQ setting in the preamp section, absolutely. I mean, on the 1073, you can buy the preamp module with the EQ behind it. I would never buy that preamp without the EQ section behind it, just because of its tone shaping options.
Right.
There. But yeah, like I said, I am very finicky when it comes to using EQs in the tracking process.
Right.
And like I said, I don't do live mixing, so I don't have a favorite there either. But,
well, live is a whole other animal, man. There's so much that you can't get away with. It's very strange.
Yep. I'm trying the Bax EQ from Dangerous. I remember love playing with that thing. But yeah, not a ton of experience with hardware EQs, to be honest.
Delay.
Ooh. I think of Strymon. What is the Strymon Timeline, right? That's their big delay pedal.
Yeah.
I know we're talking studio equipment. But yeah, no, when I think of word of mouth and delay, I think of Strymon delays, because they are just, oh my God, they're delicious. Love those. That's going to be my next guitar purchase, is getting a Strymon delay pedal for my Princeton.
Reverb,
Big Sky, but I'm a spring reverb guy. I've got a 1972 Fender Super 6, which is basically a master volume Fender Twin. And then the Princeton that I've got, just all spring. I have not experimented a lot with external reverbs, just because that's kind of like spring reverb is the Fender spring reverb is just kind of like my favorite go-to.
Yeah.
Yep.
Saturation.
Ooh. I just think of Neve. I just think of red channel, blue channel. What else? God, there's something else that I'm thinking of that I just can't off the top of my head regurgitate. I think it's saturation. The other thing I think of is analog summing. Dangerous D-Box, just that glue knob. I can't remember at the top of the head, but
did you ever stumble across one of the what is it called? I have it in my rack over there, and I don't even remember what it is. It's like an M80. I want to say pre-Sonus M80. It came out like in the early 90s.
Is it their channel strip?
It's a pre-rack.
Oh, okay.
Like 8-channel.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it's got a summing component to it, like a summing left and right channel. It's not like 8 channels or something for summing. It's 8 channels for pre's. But you throw it in there and it's like, what in the world, man? It really is a summing box. It's left and right, but it's definitely like doing something at the end.
Yeah. I loved analog summing mixers and just, that kind of equipment for studio.
Yeah.
It was huge for me because, there's a lot of people who buy preamps, compressors, EQs. You've got your DAW, and then you got your studio monitors, you've got your monitor controller, and they'll do an entire production and they'll mix it. And then they're done. And they're like, I just feel like there's something missing between me and what I get in a studio. It's like, well, let's say large format studio where you're running through a console. The console is an analog summing, which is summing that down into a 2-track.
Right.
Or a lot of times you'll run through an analog summing box, and that brings it just glues the whole session together. It takes all of the little things that you're doing digitally and then analog putting them into one space.
Right.
And the results that I got out of that box, the Dangerous D-Box, and then the Neve 5059, another favorite of mine, was one of those pieces of equipment that I could bring my wife in and be like, hey, I got something, and I'd toggle it on and off. I was like, can you hear the difference? And it was like, boom, there's something different about this one.
Yeah.
Analog summing, saturation, because like I said, the more you push the gain on that, glues and thickens it up.
I've personally in the last few years, and I had the opportunity to intern at a really, really high-end facility over in my neck of the woods. Shout out to Manifold Recording. API Vision console, nice. Just stupid $10 million plus facility. And after that experience being there for a year or so, I got more analog gear and I started printing my stems. Later on, I would make commitments after the tracking periods and basic tracking. And I noticed that was a way to compromise for lack of having the board or lack of, that. So it's pretty, there's got to be some sort of analog in there in the mixing process, not just the tracking process. It's like, no, we got to hit it again. We got to hit it. Somehow we got to keep hitting it in stages.
Right. No, that's huge.
Distortion.
Ooh. God. I think of my Mesa 50-watt single solo rectifier. It's like the sound of 90s grunge metal.
Yeah.
No, I'm a clean amp guy. So if I had for a short period of time, I actually traded it for my Kemper. I had a Mesa 50-watt solo rec, and that thing, I had it in my loft at my old house, and that thing would just blow the windows, man. That thing was ridiculous. But heavy distortion.
Console.
Oh, Neve all day. Let's put it this way. A Neve 5088 would be my dream, but I'm also not going to – I would also love to work on an API too. Those are the two consoles that I just okay, are we tracking drums? What are we looking for? Do we want massive drums, or are we looking for more of a transient-specific modern sound API? I love the workflow of Neve consoles. I love how they sound. I love the saturation. Love the flavor. They just sound massive.
I'm a Neve guy myself. Yep. Yeah. I just noticed that all the great records that I love, it was like the same 3 to 5 producers, and 89% of the time it was on Neve, and it was mixed on a Neve. Maybe it was mixed, like stems were maybe mixed, like last mixing was done on SSL or something for automation. But you know, Neve since 30 years ago have had automation, or even longer than that. Arena.
Ooh, Madison Square Garden. I mean, something about it. I don't know what it is. Probably just because you're in the middle of Manhattan and it feels insane. A lot of this is a crazy experience there, but MSG is my favorite arena.
Studio.
Favorite studio. You know what? One that I've never even been to, but Sound City, right? Just man, to be a fly on that studio's walls at some point would have been amazing. I'm sure you've seen the documentary. I actually heard Dave Grohl selling that console. Maybe he already has, but it's kind of bummed to see that. But I just think of like the stories that go down in studios in Sound City would have been an amazing one to be in.
Last one for you.
Sure.
It's a difficult one.
Oh.
Pizza.
Ooh, okay. Illuminati's in Chicago, or Dave's in Manhattan.
It sounds like it's deep dish or something. It sounds like it's.
Yeah, is it lasagna? Is it pizza? I don't know. Dude, I've been to Manhattan, for a week. I haven't spent a ton of time there. But New York pizza is like my favorite. I just don't know all the places. I think Dave's, maybe. I'm trying to remember what the name
There's so
of
many.
it.
I mean, you just throw a rock and it's like you're going to get great stuff.
The pizza that I get all the time, I'm in Chicago a lot. So, it's Giordano's or Illuminati's. I'm more of a saucy guy, so Illuminati's wins in my opinion. Giordano's is great if you get it really fresh and you're super into cheese. But man,
I'm more of a sauce guy myself. Yeah,
Illuminati's is like, and I'm sure I'm missing something in Chicago, but every time I'm there, I have to get some Illuminati's. It's a great pizza. It's a good pie. How about you? I want to know your answer on that.
For pizza?
Yeah.
I mean, I always think of like pepperoni. It's a classic pepperoni, or even Sicilian. Like if you can get a really good Sicilian that's light but still,
right.
One last question for you.
Absolutely.
I ask everybody this, and as we come to a close here, I want to thank you again for your time. This is great, man.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks again for having me, man. This has been fun.
And we'll make sure all of your information is in the description box below or to the sides. We'll go over that in a second. But if you could go back in time to your 15-year-old self, knowing what you know now, what would you tell him?
Man. You know how many times I've heard that question been asked, but I've never actually thought? I think I would have just told myself to, I'm a dad, right? I've got 2 kids. And I think I would have told myself, it's something I stressed to my kids because I didn't take school serious at all. I didn't care, right? Like, take those years a little bit more seriously because it would have made I could have got more scholarships in the student loan situation. But no, I mean, my 15-year-old self, man, you would have been terrified of. I can't believe my parents still loved me. I was an awful kid. I was that, my brother always tells me, he's like, you were always standing 2 feet away from the edge of a cliff and you didn't care, and
wow.
I found purpose and it straightened me out, and I've had a really good run at it, and I've had fun. I've been lucky to be that guy that feels like he's never worked in a day in his life because he's always had jobs that he loved.
Right.
But if there was one regret, one thing that I wish I would have went back and done the right way was just school and focused on that. But beyond that, it sounds like such a privileged, like weak thing to say. But I'm kind of that guy that had his dreams come true, right? And I don't really know.
I think a lot of it had to do, well, two things real quick, if I can interject. Number one, a lot of guys that are successful in business sucked at school. It's just a fact. Number two, you just put the work in, and you're great with people.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been fun, man. It's been crazy past 10 years, and the best part is I'm not tired of any of it yet. So I'm so excited to see like what happens. Obviously, temporarily we're stuck in a bit of a funk here, but you know what? If there's any silver lining, it's this interview. It's the fact that we've been talking for almost 10 years and we were finally face to face.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey man, listen, I really enjoyed this. Let's go over your social media real quick again and the website. We'll have it again in the description boxes and all that, but audibly.
Absolutely. So Neat Audio LLC is the website. I'll be completely honest. It's more of like a placeholder and a landing page. If you Google us, it shows up. I just don't do a ton of stuff there because we don't have a ton of clients that come to us through websites. But neat.audio is our Instagram handle. And if you just searched Neat Audio in Facebook, it'll pop up as well. Just as a little thing about Neat that we never discussed, but Neat stands for Next Era Audio Technologies. And, there's a really weird thing about Neat, and I've never told this story, so here we go. While we're at it first, I'll just pitch this out real quick. Neat was something I've been saying for probably 6-7 years,
and I was going to bring this up because it was always on the phone calls.
Yeah, I was like, neat. So at first my love affair with the word came because it's kind of like a belittling word. If you were to tell me, it's like, TJ, I just got this, and like my first reaction to you was neat, like, did I really tell you? Do I think it's really cool, or did I kind of just like leave you like, well, neat doesn't, like, do you really think that's cool? Or
it's
like
ambiguous.
Yeah, it's ambiguous. You're meeting someone in the middle. So like the word is fascinating. It's another word that most people hate is moist. Perfect. Is it wet? No. Is it dry? No. It's moist. It's that in between word, but I loved it. So I literally had so many people in my life saying neat because it's something that I would just beat to death. If you were to talk, when you and I talked,
I just start cracking up because
you might hear me say it 10 times. Yeah. And it was in almost every single Facebook post that I made if I get on my history on my Facebook post and go through 10 years ago, you posted this, it probably ends with me saying neat.
Right.
So there was this guy at Sweetwater. He's like, hey man, you need to do something with this. So he made this stupid logo.
That's right.
Yeah. And he put my face on it, and this was like a sticker, but he gave me shirts. Dude, I've got coffee mugs. I have so much neat stuff. And what I would do was I looked at it as a marketing opportunity. Yeah. I would show up to a tour with 30 shirts and like bam, 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 bam. My face was all over the place.
Right.
And it was so funny. Some people would like stop. It's like, oh, neat. How do you know that guy? And it was like in a touring community.
Right.
I probably put 100 shirts out in a span of like 6 months. Well, when Neat, the company was created, the idea was pitched that we would, my investors were like, we're going to create this opportunity and we're going to do this, but what do we call it? And one guy, he looks at me, he's like, how about global audio logistics? Because we're spitballing. We literally created this out of thin air, and then we're just like trying to name it.
Right.
And I'm like, global audio logistics, like GAL? I'm like, I don't know. There might be something better. And he's like, yeah, do you have any ideas? And I literally, on the back of the laptop I'm on right now, I have this big sticker on the bottom of my laptop. And I'm like, neat. And he's like, damn. You have been saying that for years. It was already like like kind of like branded, right?
Right.
So yeah, we just made neat, and then it was amazing. We send off the idea, and a guy created Brandon Reich, actually, amazing graphics designer, amazing history with the band too. But he did all the logos for me. We created the company structure and more of a professional image. But it's funny, I'll still show up, and my friends will still wear my original like neat shirt, and I see these stickers on road cases, and I just laugh. But then
brilliant.
Yeah, it's fun. And when I left Sweetwater, they're like, "Hey, what are you going to go do?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm leaving. I'm going to create my company called Neat." And they're like, "How long have you been planning this?" I'm like, "I swear, this literally just happened." But
Right.
when I left, it was the easiest transition to get my existing touring clients to realize who I was. They're like, "Oh, yeah, no, Neat makes sense," because it was just like such a part of my past life.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. That was fun.
That's good.
Yep.
Any last words, my friend?
Man, Jason, I just want to thank you. It's so cool that the paths are crossing again for us.
Yeah.
Like I said, no one watching this understands our history. I feel like it's a high school reunion.
Your history is our history is still in that room, and it's probably at 5 digits at this point.
Right, man. That was
I
fun.
always, every time I'd call you, it's just like, yeah, the business bank account is good, and my personal bank account, any bank account that's attached to my name is just like going to be. My cards are crying right now. It was so worth it.
It was a good transition. I mean, you made a lot of moves quick, but
you
did it right.
Well, and the Orion 32, fantastic choice. And I never thought that I would be loading up. I literally have every single external I&O filled.
Yeah.
It's stupid.
It's an addiction.
yeah, it's bad. Like, it's bad. So anyway, I blame you for everything.
No, that's great. I'm happy I could have helped with that one.
Well, this has been neat.
Very neat, my friend.
TJ Bechill, ladies and gentlemen, Neat Audio. This is the Jason Damico Show. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Check out what they've got going for you over there as well in the description box below or to the sides. If you're on Spotify, iTunes, iHeart, Simplecast, any one of those platforms, YouTube is down below. And we will see you all on the next one.
Boom. Thank you. Bye.